Hi, the United States and Israel's war against Iran is now just a little bit over a week old. I've been waiting for clarity before addressing it again because I've already talked about this. Before the war started, I made a video, I put a link up here talking about like the pros and cons, should we bomb Iran, should we not bomb Iran, etc. I didn't want to talk about it again until I had some more clarity, but to no avail. I also have been hoping for some grounds for optimism because I really want the war, now that it started, to succeed. But unfortunately, no luck. And honestly, if anything has become clear, it's that the war is a dumpster fire of world historical proportions. And I am deeply worried about the outcome. If you're new here, my name is Michael Shirkin, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Pax Americana, a conversation about world affairs, global conflict, strategy, and anything else that happens to be on my mind. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. Also consider tossing some change my way using the thanks button or by buying me a coffee using the link below in the description. You can also become a member, which would make you one of the coolest people on the planet. Okay, so let's make this absolutely clear. I shed no tears for Iran, and I admit to more than a little schadenfreude. I mean, oh no, your oil depots are burning, boo-hoo. I mean, from my point of view, like you guys, you bombed the army, you bombed the U.S. Marine barracks, you bombed our embassies, you took our diplomats hostage, and you've been sowing terror throughout the region and in Israel for decades. Why? Because, frankly, of religious bigotry, of Jew hatred, and a national identity that now seems to be based on resentment, ressentiment, the Nietzschean sense of the term, the kind of thing that he wrote about in his genealogy of morals and the origins of evil. But, it's not for nothing, though, that I've been steeping myself in military strategy, from Clausewitz to contemporaries like Generals Guy Hubin, Vincent Desportes, Michel Yakovlev, by way of Beaufre and Castex. Speaking of Beaufre and Castex, do check out my Team Beaufre and my Team Castex mugs that I'm selling, which I think are pretty cool. They're really neat. Anyways, but I'd like to think that I've learned a few things from studying the military strategy, like the fact that a war must serve some sort of political end, which implies that one must have, one, a clear vision of a desired political outcome, a desired political end state. Two, a clear understanding of how one might achieve that political end state. And three, some clear understanding of the role of military strategy in the context of a total strategy for achieving that desired political end state. Because rare are the cases when a direct military action alone will suffice in order to accomplish one's political end state. Absent these three things, one is all but doomed to catastrophe. Perhaps the only rare exception is those cases in which one side is so overwhelmingly strong that it can just sort of plow over the enemy, and when the dust clears, it can then have its way with the loser and order the world as it sees fit. That's kind of what the U.S. did to Japan in World War II. That's kind of what the Allies did to Germany. Such conflicts, however, are actually very rare. And I don't think that the present war with Iran is one of those conflicts. I mean, it could be. The United States could formally declare war and mobilize its national resources to create this massive national effort to deal with Iran as we had dealt with Germany and Japan. But it has not and will not, nor can I in good conscience suggest that that's a good idea. In fact, I absolutely do not say that that's a good idea. Now, the rules of military strategy also clearly state that one has to match your means with your ends. These things have to match. And if one lacks the means in order to accomplish your end, you have to rethink the whole project and think about what kind of ends can you realistically achieve given the means at your disposal. So let's say that what we want is regime change in Iran. I mean, fine, I'm all for it. But how does one achieve that? What combination of political, military, and economic, diplomatic, and all these other strategies would suffice to do the trick of changing the regime? The US and Israel seem to be operating with the conviction that if they just blow up enough stuff and perhaps kill enough of the right people, somehow the Iranian people will do what we think they must, which is to rise up and overthrow the government. That way we don't have to do it, and that's something that we absolutely should not do. So the theory is this: if one does X, the Iranians will do Y. Okay? But will they? What reason does one have to think that that they're likely to do Y? I mean, they might, they could, but will they? And is this a 50-50 thing? Is this a coin toss? And how would we even know? Okay, so what more can we do to increase the probability that Y will take place? In other words, if we don't do X, but in addition to X, we also do Z and A and B and C, that will make Y more probable. Okay, is that something that we're actually doing? Do the United States and Israel actually have are they advancing all these other things? So it's not just the X, we're doing X, but we're doing all these other things, which we believe is going to make Y more plausible. I'm not really sure. I don't think we're doing this at all. I mean, because it looks to me like neither the American nor the Israeli leadership has really planned this sort of thing ahead of time. So, for instance, for example, Trump's brief flirtation with mobilizing Iranian Kurds appears to be a case in point. I mean, maybe there was some planning, maybe, but the whole effort to arm Kurds, if there even ever was one, because maybe this was just nonsense or some sort of disinformation campaign, appears to have been more ad hoc than anything else. And then it was dropped in a matter of days, or appears to have been dropped. I mean, who really knows? I've also read in some places that Trump dropped this idea because of Turkish pressure. That might be true. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. But if it were true, then, or if it was true, then it raises even more questions. For instance, had the White House not thought through ahead of time how the Turks might respond? Because clearly, if we're going to arm Kurds, the Turks are probably going to have an opinion. And so therefore, it seems to me that you think this through. Like, if we do this, then the Turks are going to be angry, and does that matter? And then we could decide maybe it doesn't matter, and we could ignore it. But in this case, it almost looks like it's like, oh gosh, they have an opinion. Maybe we shouldn't do that thing. Now, another objective of the war might be to destroy decisively, or perhaps more decisively, Iran's nuclear and missile programs, which ostensibly that's what we did last year. But anyway, that is, in a way, a much more reasonable proposition, because it's more concrete. There's a bunch of stuff that you can bomb, and then you can bomb those things, and then those things are destroyed. So, okay, mission accomplished. But even that is frustratingly vague, all right? Because how do you really measure progress? How do you know exactly how many things you need to destroy in order to set back the program by how much? Do you really know it? And also, if all the United States and Israel achieve is diminishing Iran's ballistic missile program and its nuclear capabilities, surely any gains, whatever they might be, would only be temporary. Not only that, but I would say that if the regime were to survive this whole experience, but its nuclear programs and its missile programs were in tatters, it would do everything it can in order to regain its lost ground, in order to restore whatever deterrence power it had, in order to obtain nuclear weapons. I mean, if there's any lesson to be learned here, it's that if you have nuclear weapons, this kind of thing can't happen to you. So what have we actually accomplished? Short-term gains, yay. Long-term gains, not so clear. Now, what I see from the American and the Israeli sides are claims that everything is going great and that we are winning. Now, on what basis do they make this assertion? Well, the crux of the argument that we are winning is the fact that the American and Israeli air forces basically are operating with impunity. They have secured complete air superiority over Iran. That's great. They've done such a good job that reportedly the United States Air Force has, on at least one occasion, deployed B-52s. Now, B-52s are significant because these things are the opposite of stealth. They're these big, lumbering bomb trucks, right? They are highly vulnerable to even the most rudimentary anti-air capabilities. Frankly, any 1950s air defense missiles could do the job, or any 1950s vintage fighter jets, like if you can sortie a MiG-15. Heck, if you can sortie a Messerschmitt 262, you can probably take these things down. I think it's a safe assumption that the U.S. Air Force would not involve B-52s in this fight if it thought there was any reason to worry about their surviving. So apparently it's not worried. Similarly, I've also seen footage, some images of Israeli F-16s heading towards Iran, and somebody on social media noted that, look, they don't have air-to-air missiles on them. They just have like drop tanks and bombs. So they're not carrying air-to-air missiles, and what that indicates is that they're not concerned that they will need air-to-air missiles. In other words, they're not concerned that they might get attacked by Iranian aircraft. Likewise, I've been seeing from the two sides statistics relating to the number of sorties, the number of Iranian missile launchers attacked, and also the number of missiles that the Iranians have fired day by day. The number is, in fact, decreasing, suggesting, but not proving, that Israel and the U.S. have been destroying Iran's capability to fire missiles. This might be true. I hope it's true. But the problem is that it's not really a meaningful metric. I mean, remember, the strategy is that if the U.S. and Israel bomb enough stuff or kill enough of the right people, the Iranians are going to rise up. The Iranians are going to do Y. And there's absolutely no way to know how much stuff one needs to destroy or how many people one needs to kill before the Iranians do that thing that we're hoping that they're going to do. We don't have a sense of where the tipping point is. If we've destroyed, do we have to have destroyed 80% of their launchers or 90% of their launchers or 95% of their launchers? Like what? What's the number? We don't really know. You can model it, you can war game it, but ultimately it's just speculation. It's a strategy based on hope. Now, in the meantime, Iran's very predictable strategy consists of two pillars. One amounts to publicizing as much as they can the coalition's crimes, like the killing of over 100 school children by what looks to be like an American airstrike, or attacks on a desalination plant, or attacks on oil depots, which are now polluting Tehran's skies and water. All of this enables an external maneuver that can and will increase public pressure within the United States and abroad to stop the war. The second pillar is trashing the global economy, which is perhaps more than anything is what's going to sap American public will to back Trump and to keep the war going. The damage being done to the global economy is no joke. It is profound. Gas and oil prices already are skyrocketing. This is going to affect the price of nearly everything from gasoline, the gasoline that one buys at the gas station, put in your car, to the food you buy at the supermarket, etc. We often forget that most forms of the industrial agricultural fertilizer that farmers use are actually made from natural gas. So when the price of gas goes up, the price of the fertilizer goes up. Sometimes the price of the fertilizer goes up beyond the ability of farmers to purchase. This is a real problem. In addition, Qatar itself is a major fertilizer producer, and it has cut its production of fertilizer along with its production of liquefied natural gas, or LNG, which makes the LNG scarcer. So you can say, okay, but I don't buy Qatari fertilizer or I don't buy Qatari gas. I buy my fertilizer from whatever, I buy my gas from whomever. I don't really need this stuff. It doesn't really matter because these things are global commodities. If the Qatari gas, the Qatari fertilizer disappear from the market, then it's more scarce. Gas is more scarce. LNG is more scarce. Fertilizer is more scarce. The prices of all of it, regardless of where it's made or where it's pumped out of the ground from, goes up. So everything becomes super expensive. Everybody's food becomes more expensive. Now, this is really just part of the overall picture. If you look from sector to sector, every sector of the global economy, you're going to find examples of how people are getting really screwed by or are really hurt by the hikes in prices. So I'm going to give you one example. In my day job, I focus a lot on African industry and African mining. And I read recently about how copper production in Africa is getting slammed. Why? Well, because copper, when you mine copper ore, the copper is extracted from the ore using sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid is manufactured in different ways, but all of the industrial processes involve gas and or oil. So rising gas and oil prices means that the sulfuric acid becomes more expensive, which means that the processing of copper becomes more expensive. The price of copper becomes more expensive. Now imagine you have an industry that needs copper as a raw ingredient, but also has to deal with the fact that all of its energy prices are going up because probably to do anything you want to do with the copper, it's going to require energy. It's devastating for a lot of industries. And this is just one example. Again, I'm sure if you were to go sector by sector, industry by industry, you're going to see that rising natural gas and petroleum prices have these profound cascading downstream effects on everybody. The anti-Iran coalition, which does exist, I mean, there's Israel and the United States, but then there are a whole bunch of Gulf countries which are kind of rallying around them, not for any love, necessarily out of love of Israel, the United States, but because they're being attacked by the Iranians. Plus now it looks like some of the Europeans are getting involved, again, not to help us, but because of other reasons. It's possible that this coalition can persevere and continue the war despite the economic damage and all the pain that entails, and despite the mounting numbers of dead school children and civilians and all that kind of horrifying stuff. However, support for the war was never very strong in the first place. Trump has done a great deal of damage to our alliances, making our allies far less supportive of the war effort than they might have been and than we would like. I mean, I see this from all the Europeans. The Europeans are saying, we don't get involved in this war. This is like Iraq all over again. This is terrible. And you've been treating us like crap. Why should we help you? I mean, just look at the United Kingdom's very, very tepid response. For a while, they're saying, we don't want the Americans to use our bases, and they didn't allow us to use Diego Garcia, et cetera, et cetera. And they're not really joining the fray. France and Italy, in comparison, are doing a lot more, but they also are not acting to help us, per se. They're acting to defend their own interests and their own relations with Gulf nations, right? So, for instance, France has a security arrangement with United Arab Emirates. So France is showing up in order to help defend the United Arab Emirates from Iran, but they're not coming to beat up on Iran. They're just kind of coming to defend the United Arab Emirates or Cyprus, because Cyprus also has been attacked, and Cyprus is part of the European Union, so the French and the Italians and others are pretty serious about defending Cyprus. There are all sorts of ways in which this war can go badly for the United States and for Israel. But there's one way that I'd ask you to consider, that assuming that the results are no better than mixed, the bad is going to be blamed on Israel, and in fact, the bad is going to be blamed on Jews. So for Jews, already people are already saying that they are responsible for manipulating Trump and for dragging the world into a war for Israel's sake. This is Israel's war. This isn't Trump's war. This isn't America's war. And so people on the right are saying, hey, what happened to America first? Why are we putting Israel first? Et cetera, et cetera. This is the Jewish lobby, et cetera. Now, at the very least, the Jewish angle clouds people's judgment at what's at stake. It diminishes any proper consideration for the Iranian threat and for the need to deal with that threat. After all, in many people's eyes, Iran represents a threat to Israel, but not necessarily to anybody else. It reminds me of in the late 1930s when Nazi Germany was arming itself and getting scarier and scarier. France had a Jewish prime minister named Léon Blum, who was trying to get people up in arms about it, saying, hey, dudes, we got to spend more money. We got to rearm because look at those Nazis. And a lot of people in the French public on both the right and the left said, shut up, Léon Blum. The problem is just that you're Jewish and you're just worried that the Germans are going after you. But otherwise, there's no reason to be alarmed. Nazi Germany is not a threat to France. So cool it. Enough with this rearmament. This really happened. I mean, it's very clear just from a lot of the responses that I've seen online that for a lot of people, this is Israel's war. This is Netanyahu's war. This is Netanyahu who talked Trump into it. Trump himself somehow has been sidelined. Trump himself somehow has no agency. He's not his own man because he's been possessed by, the Israelis or the Jewish lobby or something. And also, to make matters worse, Trump has very dangerously sidelined Congress, contributing the sense that this is not America's war, but this is his war. And ultimately, a lot of people think that the only way Trump could have aligned his whole America First thing with this war is if he had been manipulated into thinking this by Israel. So I would argue, I think, that the rising tide of anti-Semitism that we've seen everywhere since 7 October is going to reach ever higher heights. And the Tucker Carlson wing of the Republican Party might end up gaining the upper hand, just as the progressive anti-Israel wing of the Democratic Party is now in the ascendant. Now, here's a bleak prediction. I mean, some people might like this prediction, but in my eyes, it's a bleak prediction. It's the Iran war that's going to be Trump's downfall. Not ICE, not Epstein, not the staggering open corruption or any of the other nearly daily impeachable offenses that by rights should be the end of any presidency. No, it's going to be the Iran war. It's going to be this because of the Tucker Carlson crowd. It's going to be this because a lot of the America Firsters are upset that, hey, Trump, you promised no more wars, but here we are, we're getting into another war overseas. We're firing these missiles, but firing missiles means that we're going to be weaker against the Chinese. There are all sorts of reasons why people don't like, including people on the right, don't like what Trump's doing. Plus, but perhaps the most important part is just because gasoline prices in the United States are just going to go through the roof. I mean, this is going to piss people off in the United States far more than any of the horror stories about ICE or Epstein or any of this sort of stuff. It's going to be when you have to pull up your pickup truck or your SUV to fill the tank and you have to pay like $6 a gallon. This is what's going to get people. The result, though, is if Trump falls one way or the other, either by impeachment or simply by being lame ducked, right, because he no longer has the support of his own party, many of us, I think, to our own surprise, are going to miss him. Because after him, this is what I'm worried about, the next step is going to be a populist, an isolationist horseshoe coalition that's going to be joined together by disgust with America's wars and perhaps by anti-Semitism. So it's not going to be a return to more normal politics with the good old-fashioned Republican Party and the good old-fashioned Democratic Party. It's going to be this sort of anti-war coalition. It's going to be anti-war, anti-Jewish, anti-all sorts of things. And it's not going to be good news for any of the things that we've been worried about, whether it's Ukraine or NATO or U.S. commitment to NATO or European defense, any of these things, is going to be much more like the J.D. Vance kind of isolationism. Because J.D. Vance, in a sense, has a lot of allies, although no one would admit it, on the American left. And this is what I fear, that after Trump, there's the deluge, right? He's certainly problematic, but what is he going to give way to? And we might find that it could be a lot worse. I hope you liked this video. Thank you very much. If you looked in the description, you're going to find links to my social media, my X, my Blue Sky, my LinkedIn, also my website, michaelshirkin.com. And I have a Substack also called Pax Americana. I try to write for that weekly. And don't forget to check out the merch because it's super exciting. Thank you very much. And also, I promise there's plenty more in the pipeline, including I'm going to get back to some of my reviews of foreign militaries, because I know that people like that, and I find it very interesting. And I really want to stop talking about the Middle East because enough already. Unfortunately, I suspect that this war is going to go on for a while, and there's going to be what to say for a while. Bye-bye.